Well, first of all, let me explain. I'm here to explain and help all of us understand the thinking of the Trump administration. I'm not here as a representative of the administration, so I read the same things we all read. I think the general sense of a renewal of competition with Russia and China transcends the Trump administration. It's certainly a central part of the way the Trump administration looks at the world. But for the period since the end of the Cold War, the United States has been focused on other security concerns in Northeast Asia, the Middle East, principally, and counterterrorism and counterinsurgency in Afghanistan and Iraq. We hardly recognized that China began an intense period of competition with the United States, economically, politically, and now militarily. We paid little attention to the rising concerns of Russian leaders about the European security order. And it was really in the period of the Obama administration, in which I had the pleasure and honor to serve, that we began to, our national perspective began to shift. And we could no longer afford to ignore the competition that had been begun by China and Russia. And the efforts of the Obama administration to put the relations with Russia and China onto a positive footing basically followed the same basic set of ambitions of the George W. Bush administration and the Bill Clinton administration. These efforts failed. So we've come to a time when major power rivalry is a central theme of American thinking about the world. But your question was, is it the dominant filter, the only filter? And I think the answer to that is no. For the Trump administration, there are a number of other concerns, obviously, related to remaking trade deals in a way that's more favorable to the United States. There's an enduring concern about the war on terror and whether the finishing off of the caliphate really finishes that problem or not. So we're often asked, the expert community in the United States is often asked, what's the number one problem? And the reality is there is no number one problem. We face 4 or 5 very hard problems in the new security environment, and we don't have the luxury of choosing among them. We're moving into a period in which a new set of technologies have significant disruptive potential for stability, and where we face a choice of not competing or competing and moving into a more unstable situation. This is an unattractive choice. There is no good choice. And here I'm talking about cyberspace, outer space, military competition under the sea, military competition in biotechnology, artificial intelligence. The list goes on. In the 20th century, the principal technically driven problem we needed to worry about was nuclear warfare. And in the 21st century, the nuclear problem is just one part of a complex technical landscape. From a national security perspective, there's another significant one, very significant one. And that is that in this period of renewed rivalry, Russia, well, in sequence, first China, then Russia, then North Korea, became seized with their fear that we, the United States, would use military force together with our allies to damage their vital interests and perhaps call into question the survival of their regime. The Chinese really got seized with this first in the Taiwan Missile Strait crisis in the mid-1990s. Then the Russians got seized with it in the war on Kosovo, and the North Koreans got seized with it when they stole by cyber means some war plans in the middle 2000s. They then all began to write about the challenge that they identified in the same elaborate way, which was deterring and defeating a conventionally superior, nuclear-armed major power and its allies. And they had to come up with some ideas about how are they going to do this, because we are the conventionally superior, nuclear-armed major power with a lot of allies. And they didn't, in this period, the Chinese, Russians, and North Koreans, didn't have money, technology, or a lot of forces to throw at this problem. What they had was people and brain power. And they put their intellectual houses in order They created a set of ideas and assumptions and hypotheses and maybe some wishful thinking about how they might be capable of deterring and defeating a war that America brings to them, or maybe that they bring to our allies. They then turn these theories into operational concepts, into new military capabilities that are now being exercised in the field. And these are theories of victory in a war with the United States and its allies in the spirit of Clausewitz. Clausewitz said that war is a continuation of politics by other means. So Clausewitz takes a particular interpretation of what victory means, and that's that you bring your enemy to a political point in a conflict where the enemy chooses to no longer run the costs and risks of war. And this is exactly the theories that these three countries have put together. But I don't believe the leaders of these countries want to put the theory to test in a real war. This is really a theory of victory in the spirit of Sun Tzu, to subdue your enemy without fighting. What does this mean practically? This means that Russia and China and North Korea are trying to undo the regional security order in gray zone conflicts short of war, and they're ready if the war escalates. And what's our answer to this question? From a U.S. perspective, we've been focused since 2001 on wars of counterinsurgency and counterterrorism, and we've largely put nuclear weapons way into the background of our thinking about about defense strategy. This is a potentially very serious challenge, particularly to our allies, who are in the crosshairs of these countries, and it's a challenge that we haven't really focused on. The Obama administration, of which I was a part, began to turn its attention to this question of major power rivalry, regional challenges, regional wars under the nuclear shadow. And from a military perspective, late in the Obama term, we began to hear about the pursuit of the third offset, which was a reference to trying to fix the problems in conventional deterrence with advanced technology. And similarly, in the Obama period, there was a strategy of trying to engage Russia and China in dialogue about all of this, which the Russians and the Chinese essentially rejected. And there was an effort to strengthen our relationship with allies to deal with this problem. And there was a focus on arms control with Russia. Regardless of who had been elected president in 2016, some of those policies were played out. Russia's not interested in further arms control. It has completely violated, it came to see, in Mr. Putin's words, it came to see the arms control regime created in the 1980s and 1990s as something that was imposed upon Russia when it was weak and aimed at keeping Russia weak. So he's left 12 agreements. The INF Treaty is only one of 12. So we can still seek arms control with Russia, but if they don't comply, it's not arms control that's in everybody's interest. So that's an example of an Obama-era policy where we were at a crossroads. And I think we were at a crossroads in a number of the policies that I helped develop and advocate for that need to be updated. Now, along came the Trump administration, which updated them in various ways, not all of which I find congenial, but we should understand the thinking. And most fundamentally, the thinking of Mr. Trump and his administration is driven by the view that the problem is American weakness. Too many prior presidents created agreements that weakened American power, created obligations that pinned us down, promised restraint in the arms control area that we really shouldn't exercise because we need more strength. This is a view that says Russia and China and North Korea wouldn't quite be so assertive if we were taking a tougher line. So the fundamental answer of the Trump administration is peace through strength. And of course, what we've heard mostly is strength. And what they have to demonstrate is that there's peace that results from a strategy of peace through strength. Time will tell. The administration also pulled back from arms control, pulled back from multilateralism, pulled back from alliances, pulled back. These choices don't enjoy a lot of political support. in the United States, and I fully expect many of them to be reversed by the next president, even if he or she is a Republican. The president has embraced arms races. I believe he does so in the spirit of what we called in the 1980s competitive strategies. The question in the 1980s was, if we were going to be locked in a Cold War with the Soviet Union forever, or for decades, how could we shift the competition so onto grounds where the Soviets had to compete but could never catch up and would spend themselves into oblivion, which they did. That's why Mr. Putin today regularly says, I'm not going to be trapped in an arms race again. So I believe that the Trump administration's view is that we can compel Russia to again compete, but it's not a rising power, it's a declining power, and it doesn't have the means to compete. And thus, faced with competition, it will again choose to abandon confrontation and to choose cooperation with the West. I think that's the theory. I think it's a misreading of the Russian economy. I think it's a misreading of Mr. Putin, but I think it is the theory. And so while the Trump administration is moving down its new pathway, what's the reasonable alternative that's in debate? Well, the alternative that's in the debate has a certain nostalgic quality to it. Can't we just go back to the way it was in the Obama years or the Bush years? Well, no, the world moved on. And so the real alternative to a Trump strategy isn't the old Obama strategy, it's something new. And this is the discussion that's beginning in the United States.